Welcome to World at Work TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm joined today by Mike D'Amico with Stratford Managers. We're talking about sales compensation. Mike, how does an organization know it's time to think about a sales compensation program?
I'd say there's a few real keys that you should think about. One is if you've got, as part of your strategy, very focused priorities around revenue. So you're looking at revenue growth, or maybe you're just initiating your first revenue generating product. The other big piece is when you've got roles within your organization that are really predominantly focused on generating revenue. So these are customer interacting roles, people who are going to be able to influence and persuade a buying decision.
So who are the stakeholders that should be involved in the process?
So if you're looking at putting together some form of sales compensation plan, it's really important that you engage key stakeholders. The ones that I would say are your priorities are senior management for sure. They're often going to be the ones probably driving the program to start with, but you need them to be champions all the way through and throughout the process. If you've got a comp committee or involved with your board, you're going to want to make sure they're engaged. They've got a governance role around all incentive programs, and you're going to want them to understand what you're trying to do. You've got the people involved with administering the program. So this is going to be the finance group, the HR group. You're going to want them involved in the design of the program, and certainly very clear on what their role and responsibilities are going to be once you get something launched. And then the sales staff themselves. It's going to be important to engage them. They're obviously critical stakeholders because they're the ones that you're trying to incent and motivate through the program.
So once you've identified your stakeholders and you've got some buy-in, what are some of the design considerations to be thinking about?
Probably one of the first ones is going to be around setting the compensation split. And by split, I mean how much of the earnings are going to be on a base salary, how much are going to be leveraged or through the incentive piece. Sales comp is administered a little different than normal corporate type programs. So when you're administering a corporate compensation program, you're usually doing your benchmarking on salary, you're working with salary surveys. For sales comp, you're administering it on the total target cash amount. And then you need to determine, once you've got that total target cash amount, where's the split going to be? Is it going to be 50% base, 50% salary incentive? Is it going to be 70-30? That's a big piece. Next, you're going to get into things such as draws, for example. A draw is where a new salesperson may be able to get an advance on their commissions or their incentive because they're starting up a new territory, they're trying to ramp up to speed on selling your product or your service, and they're not going to be immediately earning what they will down the road. Similarly, you'll use a draw often when you're transitioning someone from a corporate plan over to a sales comp plan. You'll also want to look at clawback provisions. This is where you've credited somebody with a commission or an incentive for an assumed sale that ends up not happening. And the company didn't get the revenue they expected to be receiving when they paid out that bonus component. So you'll want to be very clear on whether there's clawbacks as part of your plan and how those are going to work, because as you would expect, those could be pretty contentious, and you don't want to leave gray areas around those. Other things you're going to want to consider, are you going with a quota or a commission? It's a very fundamental aspect of the program. A commission is where the sales rep is going to get a dollar amount or a percentage amount of each piece of revenue that they sell. Very straightforward, very basic. A quota is where you will set a revenue target for the person, and depending on what level of achievement they make versus that target, they will have earning upside, or they could have a threshold where they're going to get nothing. And that's another key design consideration is, do you have a threshold where if you don't perform to a certain level, you get no incentive or no bonus at all? And are you going to have caps? So do you want to cap the maximum amount that somebody can earn? Some companies will go with a 200% of target bonus as the cap. Others, as opposed to using a cap, will use accelerators. So what that entails is, once you've met your target quota or amount that you need to earn your target bonus, to keep the sales rep engaged and motivated to keep pushing, the rate of return of their incentive can actually accelerate or come in at a higher rate. And what some companies will do rather than use a cap is they will level off that accelerator at a certain period. So there is no maximum amount you can earn, but you'll decelerate things once you get to a certain level, often say 200% of your target.
So as you're kind of going through listing out those design considerations, it has me wondering if an organization, when they're making these decisions, need to be more internally focused based on the goals of the program or more externally focused to be competitive. Does it depend on the component? Is there a general approach that organizations should be thinking about when they're new to this?
You're going to consider both, but I think you need to remember that any compensation program, any HR program in general, is a means to an end. You're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, you're doing it to try to achieve or meet some business objectives. So for that reason, I think you're going to want to look internally at what are your goals for the program? What are you trying to achieve? How is this aligned with your business strategy? And as the term incentive is right at its root, what are the behaviors you're trying to incent within your sales team and with people who are focused on driving your sales organization? What are you trying to incent them to do? So for those reasons, it's very heavily weighted to being internally driven and understanding what is the best program for our organization. All aspects of the design you can look at externally and understand, okay, how competitive are we? Where do we want to position ourselves competitively? I think you're going to do that with any comp program.
Is a sales compensation program the type of thing that you can pilot to kind of experiment and learn about? Or do you need to be, have full buy-in and full commitment from the beginning?
Certainly if it's a new program for your company, I would highly recommend you try to look at doing a pilot first. You're probably not going to get it perfect the first time through. I listed a bunch of design considerations. There's many others as well. And some of them you're going to get right. Some of them maybe aren't going to work out the way you thought they would. A real key aspect of the success of any sales comp program is the goal setting and setting of quotas for your sales reps. And that's a really challenging piece that if you're unfamiliar with doing it, you're going to probably have some bumps along the way as you try to learn to get it right and make sure that the expected and intended behaviors that you want to drive are happening and that you haven't created some unintended behaviors. So launching things on a small scale, a pilot, maybe choosing a handful of individuals to pilot it with, or maybe doing it on a shorter time frame, maybe trying to do it over the last quarter or half of a year, is probably a really good idea. One, to get the learnings on what's working, what's not working, and secondly, to just around the administration of the program, help people who need to be involved in your finance group, in your HR group, your management team, help them learn and understand what their roles are and work out the kinks and the quirks that may happen there as well.
Are there any other key implementation considerations?
Probably the biggest one, I think, is around the change management and the communication. Again, the program is a means to an end. You're trying to incent and drive behaviors in those revenue-generating, customer-facing people that are going to help enable the success of the company. And if they don't understand the program, you're probably not going to be set up to succeed. If they haven't bought into the program or they don't see the what's in it for me aspect to it, again, you're going to be less likely to get those behaviors happening that you're hoping for. So, I think you should spend a lot of time on communicating the program, putting in place the tools and the processes and the documentation to help the participants understand what it is and what it means to them. And also making sure that, again, the supporting functions in finance, in HR, understand their roles and are going to make sure things are working out well. There's nothing worse than introducing a sales comp program and then not paying your people on time or not paying them correctly. You're going to be digging a hole right off the bat if those things are happening.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
For World at Work TV, I'm Allison Avalos.